So admittedly, I've never really been the biggest fan of Gourmand fragrances. It really does take a lot for a Gourmand to captivate me, and even more for me to be enamored by it. But Legacy of Petra by Penhaligon's is absolutely one of those Gourmands that I love. And if you're anything like me, you're also going to really like this one. So please stick around and check out this review. So like I said in the introduction, I'm not really the biggest fan of Gourmand fragrances. If you look back through my review history on this channel, I haven't really done a whole lot of reviews of Gourmand fragrances. That is not to say that I dislike them completely. There are a couple of Gourmands that I really do like, but in general, I do tend to find myself kind of just steering clear of that genre in general. I don't know what it is, really. I don't know if it's the fact that nowadays it seems like designer houses are releasing ultra sweet gourmands left, right, and center 7 days a week. I don't know if it's just something personal. My brain just doesn't click. My olfactory sense just doesn't, I'm just not into gourmands, let's say that. Legacy of Petra by Penhaligon's is an exception. I absolutely love this fragrance, and I'm going to explain why in this review. And also I'm going to explain that if you yourself are like me and you find yourself not really enjoying Gourmand fragrances, I feel like you might just enjoy this one if you gave it a chance. So without any further ado, let's get into the review. Legacy of Petra by Penhaligon's is part of the Trade Routes collection. This particular offering was released in 2022. The nose behind this one is Natalie Gracia Cheto. This fragrance is inspired by Petra, Jordan, which is an ancient city, and nowadays it is most famous for the architecture, especially the buildings that are carved into the side of the red cliffs. The bottle itself looks like the other members of the Trade Routes collection by Penhaligon's. As you can see, it's kind of a cylindrical shape here. The top part of it is a little bit wider, and it tapers down to a slightly thinner circumference as it goes towards the bottom of the bottle. The cap here is also the same as the other members of the collection. It looks like there's a pearl on top. It's actually made of plastic. And there's a golden rope that is tied around the bottom part of the cap. Box itself here, just briefly going to go over it. This one looks like, again, the other members of the Trade Routes collection. We have the Penhaligon's logo on top, the ingredients and other information on the bottom here. I find this box here is kind of designed to look like the desert of Jordan. As you can see here, it's golden in color and it has kind of like a wavy texture. I find it kind of reminds me of like the sand dunes of a desert. Anyway, getting into what really matters here is the scent. So let's get this one out of the bottle. Absolutely intoxicating right off the first spray. So the main notes in this one, I get amber, dates, and a little bit of green tea in the opening. In the mid, I get some fennel, rosemary, and myrrh. And in the dry down, I get licorice, benzoin, and olibanum. Ooh, in the opening, absolutely intoxicating. Right off the first spray, we get a heavy amber. The amber, admittedly, is a little bit sweet. We get a little bit of that gooey, sweet, caramel-like amber characteristic, but that only lasts for a few minutes here in the opening. Along with that amber, I get a beautiful date note. So the dates are going to give it a very honey-like, earthy, fruity, but also dusty quality. Makes for a very interesting opening here. And there's also a little hint of some green herbal tea. It has some sort of like a grassy, almost uplifting kind of herbal characteristics to it as well. But honestly, I don't really find the green tea to be prominent at all. I kind of have to search in order to find the green tea. It is not immediately apparent to me, but I mean, I've been researching this fragrance for quite a while, and I do detect the green tea if I kind of try hard to look for it. But yeah, this opening here is absolutely dominated by that sweet, golden, kind of gooey amber and that honey, earthy, dusty, fruity date note. That bomb of sweetness, however, does not last. And as we go drying down, I get a lot of myrrh. So the myrrh is going to give the mid part of this fragrance a definite resinous characteristic. And there's also like a balsamic sweetness. So the honey kind of vanillic, ambery sweetness from the beginning is toned down a lot, and it's kind of being replaced with that balsamic, almost kind of like hardened honey kind of thing that myrrh can be known for. Also, I feel like the myrrh is giving this a definite earthy characteristic in the mid here. And also, I get quite a bit of rosemary here. At first, the rosemary is not super apparent, but the rosemary does come out a little bit more, gain some prominence the more this dries down. And the rosemary is going to give this a very green, almost pine-like characteristic. But especially, I do detect a little bit of camphor, so it's almost like a cooling, borderline minty feeling that I get. And I think that's coming from some of that rosemary in the mid here. Now, one of my favorite parts of this fragrance is the fennel. So without getting too deep into it here, fennel smells a lot like licorice. However, fennel itself does have a very vegetal quality to it. It has a kind of herbal, vegetal quality to it, vaguely reminiscent of kind of like celery. So it might even have like a tinge, just a tinge of like a maple syrup thing going on way in the background. But mostly it's going to be like an herbal, vegetal licorice. I absolutely love fennel. I love anything to do with licorice, at least as far as scent profile goes. And I do get a lot of that fennel in the mid part of this fragrance, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So as the fragrance goes drying down even more, we do get even more sweetness, but this time in the bottom part of the fragrance, I feel like most of that sweetness is going to be coming from licorice. So yeah, licorice, again, shares a lot of similarities with fennel. It shares a lot of similarities with anise, shares a lot of similarities with tarragon, etc., etc., because of that anethol chemical that all of those plants kind of share, even though some of them aren't even related to one another. But yeah, if you're familiar with the smell of fennel or licorice, you'll know what I'm talking about. So the fennel being herbal and a little bit vegetal in the mid definitely turns into a full-on licorice note in the dry down. Licorice is going to be sweeter, definitely a lot sweeter, more intensely sweet, and kind of more so caramelized as opposed to that fennel. And I do get a lot of that licorice in the dry down, and I'm absolutely all for it. I totally love it. I also do get a hint, just a slight hint of kind of bitterness coming from that licorice as well. Kind of reminds me of like a really sweet black licorice in the dry down, and it's really, really nice. If you like licorice. Of course, if you don't like licorice, you're going to hate this fragrance. Yeah, as a licorice fan, I'm totally in love with this stuff. Anyway, in the dry down, aside from that licorice, I do get a good amount of olibanum, also known as frankincense. So mostly it's kind of a dry, resinous incense that I'm getting. We get those kind of citrus, piney characteristics of the olibanum, also a little bit of woodiness from the olibanum. And there is like a hint of smokiness, a very incense-like smokiness in the dry down as well, coming from that olibanum, and in the dry down as well. To lend a little bit of a vanillic, kind of dusty sweetness, we get some benzoin. Now, when I say a vanillic sweetness, I don't mean like a gooey, syrupy, heavy, cloying vanilla. No. Benzoin, being one component of the amber accord, is mostly dusty. Some people find it a little powdery. Other people even find it a little bit citrusy, woody, a little bit smoky. I absolutely get the dusty, vanillic, dry qualities of the benzoin in this dry down here. So if I had to just put this very simply, this fragrance to me is all about the amber. There's some vanillic qualities and the licorice, absolutely. But like I said, there are a lot of other things dancing around those main characteristics, like some smoky, resinous incense as well. And although the amber and vanillic qualities are present throughout the entire lifespan, this never goes into like cloyingly sweet territory for me. It is, I would say at the end of the day, an amber-based fragrance. I mean, hell, there's a ton of those out there, and I find a lot of them just go cloyingly sweet. I find a lot of them are just, you know, just so drippingly syrupy sweet just for the sake of being super sweet. I don't find that Legacy of Petra goes in that direction. We are definitely met with resinous characteristics. Like I said, the incensey qualities, for me, really prevent this from going into, you know, cloying territory. But yeah, let's address the other main component of this fragrance, which is the licorice and the fennel. So this is absolutely, besides an amber-based fragrance, it's also a licorice-based fragrance. So right off the bat, if you don't like licorice, I would advise you to steer clear of this one. Yeah, licorice and the fennel, that characteristic, the anethol smell, is absolutely ever present in this fragrance, and I personally love it. I think this is a masterpiece licorice amber fragrance here, but not everybody's gonna feel that way. However, I do have to say, if you're a fan of licorice in fragrances, you gotta check this one out if you don't already know about it. Yeah, Legacy of Petra, it's not really one of the more well-known Penhaligon's fragrances. It absolutely doesn't get as much hype as like Halfeti Cedar, Halfeti Leather, or Blenheim Bouquet, etc., etc. Penhaligon's best sellers. This is not one of them. In fact, this was released in 2022, and for a little while there was a rumor going around that this had been discontinued, but I have it on good authority that it actually has not been discontinued. I've actually spoken with representatives of Penhaligon's myself, and they have confirmed that this is not discontinued. You can still find this on various websites. You can even still find this in a lot of physical retail locations as well. The price for a 100 milliliter bottle oscillates usually between 100 euros and 180 euros. There's a wide variation between those two extremes, and the price is roughly the same from what I've seen in North America, although I think in North America, like at FragranceNet, this kind of hovers around more so like 150 US for a 100 milliliter bottle, which I find absolutely reasonable. I would say this is probably better suited to cold winter weather. However, honestly, I think that a good fragrance kind of transcends any type of weather. I would honestly wear this anytime except for a hot summer's day. I would wear this at night year round. I would wear it during the day, spring and fall, definitely winter as well. I do find it lends itself a little bit better to the colder air as opposed to the warmer air, but still, it smells awesome anytime you wear it. And yeah, that's really what it's all about, isn't it? As far as versatility goes, I would consider this to be quite a versatile fragrance. Although, if you're not a fan of licorice, you might not like the way that this smells on you. But honestly, it's always different out in public when you catch wafts of a fragrance coming off of somebody. A lot of people who I know that don't even like licorice in real life, they don't like licorice fragrances. Well, even a lot of those people love the way that this smells. So last but not least, I'll touch on the performance a little bit. Not a beast mode fragrance, but it's not weak either. The total longevity on my skin is between about 7 and 8 hours. So it's above average, but like it's not beast mode at all. And the projection is not like super long. I get probably right around a wrist's length for the first hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how dry the air is that particular day. But yeah, definitely not weak. I mean, you can perceive this around you when you move around for several hours. It's just like the projection itself, not the strongest, like I said, less than an arm's length. And the longevity, definitely not the longest lasting fragrance I've ever experienced, but it does create a really nice scent bubble around you. And people definitely will smell this on you for several hours at least. So if that kind of thing is important to you, you need not worry. It's definitely a good performer. So anyway, guys, that's been my review of Legacy of Petra by Penhaligon's, one of my favorite Gourmand fragrances. In my opinion, it's one of the best Gourmand fragrances ever made. What are your thoughts? Do you know this one? Are you kind of like one of those people who doesn't always, go towards Gourmands, but when you do find one you like, you tend to really love it? How many of you are out there? Make yourselves known. Let's have a conversation about this. Anyway, guys, yeah, by the way, I'm looking to make a best licorice fragrance list. I already have like 10 in my collection, but I'm always looking for licorice fragrance recommendations. So if you know of any, please drop those names in a comment below and I will do my research. Yeah, I'm trying to put together a collection of more licorice, fennel, fenugreek, tarragon, anise, marjoram-based fragrances, so I can one day make a long list review, like I said, of licorice-based fragrances. Yeah, guys, I'll leave it there for tonight. As always, I super appreciate your viewership. I appreciate the interaction. Can't wait to see you next time. And until then, keep it real.